All right,
Oh
Chris,
man, yeah.
hit Frank with a question.
Well, what I would like to start off with is, for me, one of the biggest impacts you had on my life was when I got the modes No More Mystery. I was going to say DVD, VHS video back in those days. And
Yes.
because, modes were pretty confusing and people had some very strange ways of explaining them, and they never worked. And when I got your
Hmm.
video, I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And particularly with the harmony and things that you added behind each mode. So I'd like to ask you, kind of take us through, I don't know, your journey and how you learnt all that stuff. Starting from, how did you learn it? Because you've now gone on, and I've bought your harmony lessons on your website.
Ah, thank you.
It's quite detailed. You go from the beginning right through to all the advanced things, and
Yeah.
just want to, yeah, because I mean, a lot of people go and study different places, and should you take us on the journey of how you learned all
How I
that
came up with
stuff?
it.
You know?
Yeah. Sometimes it's trial and error. I always like to think that when I actually create a product of any kind to put out there, that it fills a niche, or I do a lot of clinics and seminars and in music schools and colleges around the world, and I hear the same questions over and over and over. How do you do this? What mode is that? What scale? How do you approach this? I always take note, because I go, well, the curiosity is obviously there, and there's a need for this, whatever the subject matter happens to be explained. And I had a lot of students when I was a young man. Even at 16, I had about 40 private students.
Wow.
I was always into learning harmony after about the first 10 years of playing, because it got to the point where I just wanted to understand what I was playing. I didn't want to be shooting in the dark or playing by ear, man.
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's me.
Well, playing by ear is fine, depending on the kind of music you're playing, and in a lot of cases, if the music is easy enough, you don't really need to play anything more technical or have any more knowledge. But to me, it's kind of like turning the light on and clearing up, dark areas. Basically, it's
Yeah.
like learning your fretboard. A lot of people just stick to the dots. Oh man, I don't play between the dots, man. No, it's like this fear of the unknown, or you stick to this position or that box or this box, but the
Right.
ones in between, and they're all, eventually you want to learn the whole fretboard. You don't want to be stuck in just one place where you're not going to be able to play freely. As a young man, as I was, I had a lot of students, and I'd already done some pretty cool study. I'm self-taught. But this is the much longer process when you teach yourself to play and learning from records and trying to figure out, or to comprehend what's happening. And eventually music suddenly becomes, when you really get deep into it, it suddenly becomes very, very logical. Okay, so if someone's playing a G chord, someone else is going to be playing a G scale, G major scale, or if it's a seventh chord, they're going to be altering the major seven to the flat seven to incorporate the notes of the chord. It has sense to it, And I started to piece this together for years and years, and I had to be organized to teach people. I think it was Einstein that says if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, then you don't understand it yourself.
Right.
Or a young person. I don't know if it was specifically 6 years old, but I remember teaching at GIT back in the day, and there were a lot of students that just didn't understand the importance and the significance of modes. I said, man, I can't play at all if I didn't know or understand the modal concept, And they're always saying, well, Frank, what's the point of learning all 6 or 7, excuse me, 7 scales of a major scale when they're all the same as the major scale? You're just starting in a different place. my answer to that usually is, okay, if I play E, or almost E, there it is, it's a bit better. If I play E, is that the same as E minor? You have to answer no, right? No, it's not. If I play E major on this, I'm going to not play E major when it's a minor chord. It's clearly coming from a different place. So not all... You want to focus on the root of the chord that you're dealing with, or the key that you're dealing with, you know. You have to understand modal chord progressions, because a lot of songs are not in major. A lot of songs are in major. If you've got 1, 4, or 5, that kind of typical progression, or clearly it ends and it sounds like it's finished at a root position of C, so it sounds like C major, and it is C major. But what if I've got a progression like this? For example, probably heard that one a long time ago. So what's happening here? It's really A minor, C to D to G. And it sounds like it would end at A. But this is minor. This is not a major scale. We're going to borrow the information from the parent scale major, because major shows us the harmony in general, but then you have to zero in on the particular scale that you need for that particular song. And in this case, there are clues. Inside the harmonized scale, there's clues all over the place as to what key it's really in. So if you, I always say 4 and 5 of the major scale, that only occurs at the 4th and 5th position, 2 major chords a whole step apart. So if I see it anywhere else, if I see, like in this progression again, A minor, C to D, there's my clue, C to D. Okay, then that must be 4 and 5 of what scale? G. But this sounds like it's an A minor song, so it's the second mode. A is the second of G. And there you have your your Dorian scale. Owner of a Lonely Heart is in a Dorian key. It's not major. It doesn't go... It doesn't end there. It wants to go back to... Thank you, good night. You know,
Right.
So little by little, you know, I started to piece this stuff together, and I realized that I had to, for the modes, to get the point across, I really had to say, well, guys, start each of the intervals for major. If you take major, then Dorian, and then Phrygian, and the 7 modes, and you start them all on the same note, there you undeniably see the difference. This is C
Right.
major. So if I start Dorian there, the tones are different. Phrygian, Lydian. You've got 7 different sounds. I think it was a poor Greek translation into English, because it should have been moods, not modes. They're distinct modal sounds that they have their own inherent mood.
I looked at them that way myself. Because I didn't know what the modes were called, but I was playing modally, and I could differentiate between a major scale and a Mixolydian mode. But I would listen to it and go, well, it's obviously happy because it sounds major, but it's... I used to sort of laughingly say it's 2 beers happy. Because that flat 7 just seemed to give it a levity to me, like a not quite a serious mood to it. Like you said, it's a mood.
They have character. And then, so on my huge course that I wrote when I was teaching, I wrote several courses when I was head of the guitar department at LA Music Academy, which was a boutique school. And, you know, I wrote this giant theory course that was to last for the whole year. In fact, it even got stretched out to 2 years later. And then that's the one I have recorded for my online school. It's called Peace and Harmony. And I wanted to just have a course that would be the definitive only theory course you'll ever need in one place. And if you study it from beginning to end, it's like 18 hours of video. It's a deep course.
Wow.
But, when you're done with that, there's nothing you don't know about harmony, that you'll ever need, I think. So it's all there, The problem with a lot of people with their understanding of music that I've found with students is we all learn sort of in a haphazard way. Sometimes you get a teacher who might teach you this, that, or the other, and then you'll hear something on a record and you try to copy it, and you'll see somebody doing a lick and you might copy that. And so you get all these fragmented pieces of information coming at you from all over the place, and you sort of start to piece it together. But it's often not very coherent. It doesn't really have a method to the learning process. And so that's what I tried to do on that course, was go, if you start here, and sometimes you have to go back several steps, no matter where you are in your development, to shore up the foundation. When they build a giant skyscraper, they dig an incredibly big hole first. They go the opposite way, because you need that foundation to have a solid structure. And it's the same too when it comes to learning harmony. Go back to the very beginning and get the basics down, your intervals, your chord construction, your harmonized scale, and your modal concepts. If you do that, you're not going to be afraid to play in any musical situation. And that, for me, was the motivation. Because I couldn't stand having a chord I couldn't rip apart, I don't want to be stumped by anything. Although Chick Corea managed to do it on many occasions.
I guess so, yeah.
We'll forgive
Depends who you're dealing with, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But for me, in everything from there, from Chick Corea, everything else is easy.
Yeah.
That was my motivation. I really wanted to be clear. I wanted to, people worry that if they learn all this theory, they're going to lose their feel, which is one of the stupidest things I ever heard. If you have a heart, I generally have one. It's in here somewhere. I haven't seen it, but I know it's there. And if you have a pulse and you're human, you're always going to have feel. I don't care. You don't let the intellect get in the way of your feel. It's a marriage between the two. It's the intellect feeding the inspiration. For me, it does. And so you're not going to lose feel. And the other silly statement is, oh man, if I learn all this harmony, I'm going to play jazz. And that's also really stupid, To me, the best artists out there are the ones that are just mixing it all up. Think of harmony as color. If you forget that it's anything stylistic, it's not funk, it's not R&B, it's not rap, it's nothing. It's just information. It's color. Think of it as a color palette. Why would you only ever want to paint in black and white? For me, I love color, or you only want to paint everything in blue and brown. It doesn't make sense when you have the full color spectrum and everything in between, hundreds of variations.
Right.
So to me, that's how I look at harmony. I look at it as mood and color.
That kind of command of any musical situation, that you've got and that you talk about, that is pretty much a prerequisite for the Chick Corea band, I would imagine. Like, you couldn't hold that chair with any kind of weakness in any area, I would imagine.
Well, when I first joined, I had several weaknesses that I had to shore up pretty quickly. And one of them was the rhythmic side of my playing. It dawned on me after the first tour with Chick that he's not only a genius, and there are many great genius musicians out there, but not only was a genius harmonically, but he was also rhythmically a genius. Where he placed his phrases and how he would go over bar lines and have this giant 8-bar something or other, and he'd always bang on at the end of the 8-bar phrase, no matter how far out it went, rhythmically. And, I would go, holy crap, he's lost me there. I'm hanging on to Dave Weckel's hi-hat, Good thing Dave was, right behind my head usually, or nearby on my side of the stage. So,
but yeah, you like you said, I think you said you're only 26 when you got that gig, right?
yeah, I was 26, pretty young.
Yeah.
I was, already playing for almost 20 years at that point. So I had a lot of stuff down. And being at GIT really helped me a lot because I learned to study certain things that I was going to need. Rhythm, learning to read better, at least read well enough to get stuff off the page. Yep. Because sometimes you don't understand it clearly. And this is another reason I like to encourage folks out there to learn to read, even if it's a little bit. Because it offers another light bulb. It's a brighter light than just playing by ear, because you actually see the phrase written rhythmically helps to know exactly where it is in the bar or the phrase. It's a kind of clarity that you need. And when you have a drummer like Weckel, who's doing this, I used to say sometimes the breaks were just as hard as the music with the electric band. Because, you might have to play something really abstract. It's normally okay. Yeah, I can deal with it. But when Weckel's going, it's like tumble dryer drum fill, and you have to come in with, and he was a surgeon, man. He still is. He's a genius drummer. A total surgeon. And sometimes in the early days, he had a bit of a thing. He would come up to me, Frank, and that time track on that song, the bridge, B part, you were late on this bit. Oh, I said, was I? Geez, shit. I must have been looking at some chick in the front row or something, But it was good. It was good for me because actually I was dragging a section. It might have been hard physically to play or something. So I had to, work on that little phrase or whatever it was to get it right. And all this stuff just goes to make you a better player,
Right.
Chick required a lot of harmonic skill and rhythmic skill. And, it was after the first tour, I had a good break before the next one. And so I worked really, really hard to get stronger rhythmically.
How did you work on that? Were there any particular exercises you did or metronome tricks? Or?
There's a book that I love, and I was using it even back in the day when I was teaching at GIT, and it's a drum book. It's called The Modern Reading Text in 4/4. I don't know if you've ever seen that book.
I may have seen it.
It was done, Louis Bellson wrote it in the 50s.
Wow.
And it's really cool. And I used to do it with rhythm guitar or melodic phrases. It's only rhythm, but it's every rhythm.
Wow.
And it's logically laid out so that it develops you rhythmically. Yeah, get that book. It was written in the 50s and it still cranks away. It's just an awesome book that you can practice every possible rhythmic combination. And you need to get good at that. You need to know where every 16th is in a bar. And if you need to play the 4th 16th of 4 or the 2nd 16th of 2, you need to be able to completely nail it.
Did you ever use a metronome to work against or anything like that?
Well, drum machines, basically.
Right.
Or even those, back in the day, it was the Roland little, you could tap a rhythm and you could do odd meter. I'm not a big fan personally of odd meter. I've done a few things here and there, but man, 4/4 and 3/4 is enough for me. I kind of liked Chick for that reason too. We never really played anything odd meter. He always preferred, and I do also, is odd over even. So you have a 4/4 tune, but you can play some really bizarre odd. I wrote a course also for my online school called Rhythmic Displacement, which is exactly what that course is all about.
Right,
You know,
right.
displacing rhythms, but over 3 and 4, 3, 4, and 4, 4 times, which are the two most commonly used. You know, you might have an odd bar of 5/8 or something somewhere along the line, but in general, I don't like that. To me, odd meter sounds, it's exactly what the name says, odd.
Odd.
Because it always sounds like it's a tire with a flat spot. You know, every time you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, you know, just make it round. Go 8. What's wrong with 8? You can play 7 over the 8. You know, 3
Right.
7s plus 3. And then you have 2 bars of 16th notes. Or did I get the math right? Something like that. You know what I mean? You can do
Exactly,
odd rhythms, but it won't sound odd because it's in an even meter. Or I prefer quarter note odd rhythms, odd times, because, you know, 7/4, at least it's always got a quarter pulse, you know?
Yeah.
So people can, believe it or not, tap their foot. I mean, I don't want to be esoteric with my music. I want people to like it. Who doesn't want people to like your music? There's that famous joke about avant-garde jazz, you know. They say, you can go to an avant-garde jazz concert anytime for free, but you have to pay to leave.
Oh, God. The alternate tuning thing, like, just, I know we're going to touch on that later, but I just wondered, like, because I know that a lot of the voicings that you really loved all came from piano, and like, were you trying to get those on your regular guitar? And
Well, yeah, you know, guitar has its limitations, or at least this tuning does. You know, people have experimented with other tunings. I did for many years. I was a big fan of Dave Crosby from Crosby, Stills and Nash as a young man, and there was one tune in particular which I still love to this day. It's just a phenomenal song called Guinevere. And that song, I could never figure out the chords. And the reason was he was using an altered tuning. And I finally bought a book. There was a transcription book of his songs. And Guinevere was in it. And he shared the tuning, which was, it was an open 1/5. Open minor
wow,
11.
interesting.
That's the vamp. It's beautiful. You know, but I couldn't figure it out for the life of me because I thought, well, it's standard tuning. I'll never be able to play it.
Right.
To me, that's the problem with that is that you can never feel as comfortable with an altered tuning because all the shapes change and you have to learn. It's like starting over again.
Right.
I don't have time for that.
No.
When I was about 17, I got frustrated with the guitar enough. You know, I was trying to play chords like this. That's my favorite 13th voicing. I don't know if you can see it. It's a bitch to play on the guitar, and there's only certain keys you can play it in. That's just one small example. I got so fed up with guitar. At 17, I decided I want to be a piano player. So for 2 years, I didn't play guitar at all. I just went keyboards. Because keyboard, at least, you know, if I want to put 2 notes together here and 2 notes together over there, you know, I can play it. You know, you just can't do it on guitar. Plus, you can accompany yourself. You can play a voicing and try a melody or try a scale. Or,
Right.
you know, it has a lot of freedom that guitar doesn't necessarily have. And I wasn't limited with chord voicings. I love cluster voicings, those notes that clash, seconds and minor seconds. I love those kind of chords. They appeal to me. And so I just went, screw this, I'll just play the piano. You know, and after a couple of years, my older brother Nunzio said, you know, what are you doing, Frank? You know, you suck on the piano. Come back to the guitar, please. Don't throw away 10-something years on the guitar. And we've got a gig on Saturday night, and we don't want you on the keyboard. So thank God for that. Otherwise, I probably never would have played with Chick Corea
Wow.
for all those
Did you come
years.
back to did you come back to the guitar with a different perspective then? Do you think?
Yes. What happened was I ended up just playing both instruments. I still play the piano, write a lot of stuff on piano. I have a lovely grand piano, Yamaha C7, and other various keyboards. If I show you my workspace here, it's got keyboards and everything. I love it. I still play keyboards. I still love to, sometimes if I'm writing a song and I can't figure out where to go next on the guitar, I'll just jump on the piano and try to take it from there, or vice versa. You know, so it's good to have both. It's good perspective for both. It took a long time for me to figure out there was a tuning. In fact, it took me 40 years to figure out another tuning for the guitar that really works.
When you did come back to the guitar after that period, were you already starting to develop your sweep picking technique, or did that happen later? Or?
No, well, I was well underway with sweeping when I was 13.
Okay, right.
It dawned on me that, why would anybody want to play 3 adjacent notes? Why would you play that alternate? What? You'd have to be crazy. That's so inefficient when you can just go one downstroke. So I remember, I had this one phrase that really started it off for me. 4 notes, 2 picking strokes. Oh, that's enough. I rest my case. Right there. I'm playing half the amount of picking to get those 4 notes out compared to a regular alternate, where you actually have to pick every note you want. There's hammer-ons and pull-offs and all that stuff. I could hammer that if I wanted to. There's various techniques on the guitar. And it doesn't really matter how you get the notes out, as long as you do. But for me, with the sweep thing, it was very logical and fairly easy too. And then I thought, maybe I'll try it backwards. It works backwards, 1 down, 1 up. Maybe it works on the next 3 strings. Sure enough, exactly the same thing. Next 3, it's in. So then after like half an hour, or something to that effect. So I took the
Half an hour.
this one,
Half an hour. Yeah.
maybe 40 minutes. It was just the same logical movement on different strings. So I knew I could, expand the idea,
Right.
keep expanding and expanding until it just overtook my whole world. It was one of these techniques that it sneaks up on you,
One of the things that just astounds me, it's just one small element of what you do, is when you're basically working with just 2 strings, and you play. It's almost like you can play like a pentatonic shape, but I've even seen you move that chromatically. So there's these amazing chromatic sounds you can come up with when you move it up and down the neck, and it's just
Yeah, a lot of
it's
people, like
those
if you're playing a pentatonic lick, like most people will pick all 4 notes, right? But I will do 2.
right, yeah,
See, 1 up, 1 down to cover. See, the essential idea is whenever you go from one string to the next, if you can line it up so that it's going in the same direction you need, it makes sense. And if you can save 1 picking stroke, then you've gained something. It's like the Formula One guys, they're shaving ounces off the car just to get it to go faster.
right.
And it's the same thing for me, technically. If I can save 1 picking stroke, it's a win. in the early days, for me, I had to reposition a lot of the notes on the left hand. You know, I always use this simple example. A minor pentatonic, everybody plays it like this pretty much. But there's so many ways to play those same notes. This open E is here, 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 here. You know, you have a lot of places you can play the same notes. And the thing about the guitar that is a characteristic of the guitar, the overlapping of notes.
Right.
This confuses a lot of people for a long time, you know. And this is why piano is so much simpler. You got this E, you only have one. Play it with all your fingers if you want, but it's still just one. You don't have a choice. And I love to have choice. I see this phenomenon of the overlapping of strings as a plus for us. It really is, because we have options. And it really, for me, it helped a lot to enable the sweep in the early days, because for me, having 2 notes per string like this just was clunky. You can't really pick it up too fast. I just can't play it even after 50 years or whatever. Any better or faster than that, right? So I started to explore. Look at all these variations of the same notes. That's one. That's for those who like to hear with their eyes, because that's a pretty cool looking lick. Okay, and then there's this one. And these are all very small variations. There's this one. There's this one. That one's not bad. But this is the one I play, and it's very bizarre, and I've never seen anyone else do it. 3 notes on the G string.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me get in a position that's comfortable here. It really works. I mean, it works. It works if you need a phrase to like that, you know. And so I started really shifting away at different things. Like for me, the arpeggio thing was an obstacle. I had this major 7 arpeggio, which is in all the textbooks. And it's good for the left hand. You know, you don't have to change position. It's all in the same 4-fret box. But you can't play it any faster than that. I mean, you could try for 100 years. I've tried for 50 and I still can't do it better than this. With alternate. It's a disaster. So I had to break a few rules. I like this part. I could sweep it, but I've cut out a note. It's not that, it's just, that's where I broke the rules a little bit. And then I moved, this first part wasn't happening, it was breaking up the flow. So I put this G here, you know. As far as I know, there's no music police that are going to come up on you and say, hey man, you can't put that note there. Sorry. Put it back. So now I got 3 notes on the D string. This becomes the first part. Simple sweep, 1 down, 1 up. And then I just shift to this position where the major 7 shape is. All the way down, all the way up, and then shift back. And I turn it around with an extra note on the bottom. And so as a pattern, I mean, if you were to count the number of times, most people don't count how many times they pick alternate. Just as a comparison, you know, if you had to pick alternate on this arpeggio shape of mine, you'd have to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17 times, right? With the sweep you got, and I count sweep strokes as a single stroke, This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I'm playing 7 picking strokes to play 17 notes. That's pretty deep when you think about it. That's why it works. As fast as you want, you know. It's crazy. It was crazy when
The thing that astounds me is not only like the beautiful logic of the whole approach, but there's a sound contained within it. Your sound, you just sound like you, and it's not only because of the way you've invented this technique, but it's also. I love the fact that it's not just like this is a more efficient technique. It's also got a sound. So if you want that sound, this is how you get it. You know what I mean?
Well, I thank you for that. It's really hard to find your own voice on the guitar. It's one of the things that you really, well, it depends what kind of guitar player you want to be. If you want to, have a vibe and play in a band, you just need to be a good guitar player with a good solid sound. And, you can play anybody's stuff. You can play, Santana, and you can play Clapton stuff, and you can be a good working solid guitar player with a lot of great skill and not particularly have a style of your own, but play good. Or you can try to be a stylist where you're the other approach, right? Where you're like Jeff Beck, for example. God bless him. We lost him today. What a great and amazing guitar player he was. He was such a definitive guitar player where he could play a melody and you go, that's Jeff Beck,
Exactly,
that's Jeff Beck. No doubt, no question.
Right.
And that kind of standing apart in your own field like that is really difficult to achieve when you consider how many guitar players there are. To be able to listen to someone and go in 10 minutes or 10 seconds, that's Matheny or it's whoever. And I didn't set out to achieve or try to achieve that. It just sort of happened organically because the way I was approaching the instrument, when I was a kid in Australia, I didn't know that nobody else was doing this or that nobody else had thought to do it like this. And I just kept developing it, and it really did become a style. But I never approached it from a purely technical standpoint. There were definitely technical hurdles to overcome. And that was the block for most people who had attempted it in the past. You would just get a single phrase or a Les Paul, he would do it. That makes sense to do that. He did that, and this is why I had this argument recently when I decided to claim my version of sweep picking, as the originator of sweep picking. But I have recently come under a lot of criticism. People are, Les Paul did it, and somebody else, 100 guitar players did it before me. But they didn't do this.
I don't think anybody else could do that.
Nobody did that, right?
Nobody did that.
And so, we have to, weigh up our checks and balances here. And thank God this friend of mine, Jude Gold, who was the editor of Guitar Player magazine when it was still going, at least as a physical copy. He became the head of the guitar department at GIT in Hollywood. And now he plays guitar with Jefferson Starship.
Yep.
And he was at my house one time. He called me up. He wanted to do a podcast with me for one of his podcasts. And, I told him I was getting a lot of flack about, the claiming sweep picking. And he says, why are you fighting against this when you could easily put your name on it and just do that instead. Like, call it Gambale sweep picking. So this is my, essentially my version of what sweep picking is.
Right.
So I don't, okay, it may have existed as a little iota or a germ of an idea, but nobody developed it to the level or the degree that I did at the time. Because when I hit the airwaves, pretty much people were in shock. I remember the reaction. Now it's sort of happenstance. Everybody's sweeping or tapping or every other technique available. But it's one thing to follow. It's another thing to be the first one out of the gate with something special like that. And it's
Right.
So he suggested just call it Gambale sweep picking, and nobody can argue that. And I thought that's completely brilliant, and why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, it's a great.
So so that's what I call it now, Gambale sweep picking. There are other sweep picking sources, yes, but this is my brand of it, So
That's like I was saying, like what you've done is you've added to the lexicon of our instrument, but not only in the sense of a way to approach it in a physical sense, but even just sonically. Like, I mean, that to me is a huge achievement. It's amazing, and it's like you could hear like guys finger tapping, but a guy like Alan Holdsworth, Alan could do a lot of that stuff, and it was just with his left hand. So sonically, you couldn't really tell the difference. But like I said, when you play your style, sonically it is undeniable who it is and what's going on. So it's either you or it's someone who has studied you and learned from you. So.
Right. Well, it's easier, again, to follow someone, but who wants to be, he sounds like Matheny or he sounds like Gambale or, nobody wants to wear that moniker,
No, exactly.
It's okay to be influenced by someone, but I always say to young guitar players coming up, spread out your influences, don't get stuck on one person. And don't get stuck on one instrument either. Most of the transcribing I did as a young guitar player, especially when I just discovered people like Chick Corea or Michael Brecker on the saxophone, I transcribed their solos.
Right.
I wasn't listening to much guitar at all. And guitar, I think, was a little behind the development of other instruments. Saxophone's been around since the 1800s. Piano, God knows, 300-400 years now.
Yeah.
So, the technical ability on those instruments, was far superior to electric guitar players. And it's kind of gone the other way now. Guitar is really influencing piano players, which is interesting to me. I hear young piano players saying, "Oh, well, I listen to Holdsworth."
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That freaks me out,
Yeah, you do hear a lot of keyboard players that are, or you hear them in interviews, and they're very much into Alan, and they've got his sound, and they're trying to play his lines, and like people like
Exactly.
Derek Sherinian tries to cop Eddie Van Halen solos, and he's quite good at it too. He's
There
very
you
good
go.
at playing Eddie's stuff. So
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to see that because guitar's evolved really a lot over the last 20, 30 years.
right,
And I'm happy to have been a contributor to something that's important on the guitar. It's something that just happened. I don't know where it came from. It's like it's the same thing when you think about the actual concept of an idea. It always freaks me out. Where do ideas come from? I look around the room and go, it just comes to you. It's some sort of magic,
yeah.
Where does an idea come from?
Well,
That's something to ponder.
It's the thing of you having that initial germ of an idea, but also having the courage to see it through and go, well, this stops when I say it stops, and it never did. It just kept going, and it does take a lot of courage, especially for a young person.
Well, I think it's naivete at that point.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Because there's a big difference to me between something that's difficult and something that's impossible. And the general feeling with this technique, to take it any further, was that it was impossible. or everything that I understood about the technique, people thought it was impossible, really difficult to play in time. There were a lot of excuses. And perhaps because I was young and naive, I thought, well, it can't be impossible. It must be, it must be possible. I just didn't believe it, I said, it works. There it is, it's working. I mean, I got to just take it further.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there were times when I thought, what the hell am I doing? I'm screwing up my entire method of playing guitar at all. I can't play alternate or sweep. I was in this horrible limbo for a long time,
Right.
And I couldn't do it in time either very well back in the day. And I'm glad by the time I reached, America, it was already pretty established.
It's really good to hear you say that, because that would be an amazing thing for a lot of players who are struggling, trying to grow and trying to develop a new technique right now. Because for a lot of us, we hear a player like you and we just think you just appeared one day and there you are. Like you don't.
Hell no.
You don't see the hours and years of dedication to perfecting your craft and then being musical with it. And so I'm glad you said that, because there'll be a lot of people that'll see this and go, man, thanks. I should keep going and persevering.
Yeah, well, if you love the instrument, you do persevere. Nowadays, when I look at kids, I got a 13-year-old daughter. It's hard for them to stay focused, and because it's something that really isn't anywhere near instant gratification. There is some gratification along the way. As you learn something new, you go, and it takes a long time for all this to become, I would say it takes a long time for the guitar to become your friend instead of your enemy.
Yeah.
It gets to the point where it finally does become your friend, and you pick it up, and it's something that's been with you all your life, if you played it all your life. People come and go in your life, but the guitar remains. Yeah. And it's saved me on a number of occasions, when there was nothing else. And and music in general, my deep love and passion for music and exploring all the possibilities through the guitar as my tool to get there.
Yeah.
And you have to have an absolute passionate love for it. And I still do, which is the crazy thing. After all these years, I'm just as passionate about guitar. I just wish the whole world was. The funny thing is, there aren't a whole lot of instruments really to choose from where you can really compose and everything I'm hearing now. For a period of time, there was a lot of drag and drop chords from, everything's MIDI this or MIDI that, or sample this or sample that. I was gratified. I was listening to some music my daughter's listening to at 13, and she's listening to some pretty wild stuff. But I hear, grungy guitars and stuff. I'm hearing guitar again, which I'm really delighted, because there was a long period where guitar just became uncool, man. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Guitar is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a slew of incredibly exciting young players out there. So it's never going to go away. It's just, it is, I think I understand what you were saying. Like, it's just competing with a ton of other options now. Playing a musical instrument is still one of the greatest examples of you get what you put into it. You get out of it what you put into it. There is no instant gratification when it comes to excellence on a musical instrument.
Yeah, you're right. I used to have students that come up to me and say, yeah, man, I've been playing like 20 years. I go, oh, wow, that's great. That's a long time. Let me hear you play. And I go, oh my God, so what, really? 20 years? Holy crap. And then you get this other kid that's playing 5 years and he's completely ripping. And you go,
yeah.
Wow, man. So I learned a long time ago, it's not how long you've had a guitar.
Yeah. I think you were the first person I ever heard say, yeah, there's guitar players and guitar owners.
Yeah.
Guitar collectors.
Yeah, it's not how long you've owned it or had it. It's what have you done with it?
What have you done with it? Would you mind grabbing that double neck, please, Frank? I'm dying to hear this.
I was going to say, I can't wait any longer.
This is a Kiesel double neck that they made for me that's been incredibly modified to, to cut it down in weight and size and all that stuff. So we made sure to keep the logo, right? Couldn't lose that because it's not on the headstock because it isn't any.
It's a great body shape that it's become now, which I guess is what you guys did, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was like there was extra wood all over the place, and in fact, there was about another 2 inches or an inch and a half or something between these two necks. I had my custom guy cut this down and then displace the necks also because he shifted this part of the body forward because the bridges were lining up, and when I was playing this lower neck, the bridge was from the upper neck was in the way. In fact, I would displace them even further, but this is just the one we've been hacking up just so we can try stuff. So, you ready for any chord? Let me put some chorus and stuff on there. Some delay. I love it. You can play any chord you want.
That is just fantastic.
Love it. Those chords that I used to struggle with that I always wanted to play was, major chords where you add the second. There's our normal triad, right? Looks like a D. But I always like to add the second in there too.
Unbelievable.
So simple. And they're an easy chord on the piano,
You're going to have to explain it from the ground up because everyone's going to think it is a complete alternate tuning, but it's not, is it? You're still playing guitar shapes, right?
Here's another place where I come into argument. I called Gambale sweep picking to stop the controversy about who did what and everything else. When somebody takes a creative step forward, they deserve the recognition for that. People say, "Oh, Gambale it's just a modified Nashville tuning." Do you know what Nashville tuning is?
Absolutely.
Okay, for those who don't, I'll explain it briefly. Nashville tuning is when you have a 12-string guitar and you take the low strings off. The first four, the low four, have octaves, right? There's a higher octave and there's 2 notes that play an octave interval like that. For each string, you've got this octave sound. And then the first 2, because you can't go up an octave from the first 2 strings, they're in unison. So you take all the low strings off and you keep the 2 high strings in their normal pitch. And what you have is a very high-pitched, octave higher than the regular guitar, because these low 4 strings are up an octave from standard guitar tuning. And it sounds like a little mandolin. It's a lovely sound, but it's a mandolin. I mean, nobody took this extra step because this is the thing that excited me. I was fooling around with a VG99, which is this Roland box where you can preset tunings. And one of the presets was Nashville tuning. I'm being straight here with this, how I took this extra creative step that no one did before. I was freaking out with the Nashville tuning because I was playing voicings, any voicing I wanted to play. But I thought, I don't want to be up there in mandolin range. Someone, me, decides to take it down. Let's make it the fundamental guitar, because in Nashville they use it as a second guitar. Somebody's strumming the big chords, and someone else is playing the jingly jangly upper octave on a Nashville guitar, a Nashville tuned guitar. It's not that different from a 12-string, really, which has been around forever. But no one thought, let's make it the fundamental guitar, because you can play any chord. Well, the first thing I did was string up a guitar immediately. This was in 2003, by the way. I went, let's do the reverse. Let's leave the low 4 strings and make the first 2 strings down an octave, which would be the same as Nashville, but down an octave. Now, for me, that was too low. It sounded like a baritone guitar. So I've gone from a mandolin to a baritone guitar, so it's still not right. So I experimented up a minor third. From there, I settled on up a fourth from where the octave down was, or you could think of it as down a fifth from the standard Nashville tuning. So my low string is an A, right? And it's like as though the notes, the open string notes would be like you had a capo on the 5th fret of a regular guitar. Okay. So those are the open notes, right? It would be A, D, G, C, E, A. Except the first 2 strings are down an octave. And it takes a little getting used to having a wound what would normally be a B string. But what's incredible about it is that I don't have to learn any new chords. I can still play all my standard regular. So anybody can pick it up and play it right away because it's essentially guitar tuning.
Right. It's not an alternate tuning.
Well, it is altered.
but not, not one you've got to relearn in the sense that you've got to relearn chord shapes.
No. But there are a million new ones because it presents different things. Because, well, I didn't want to start over again. I know a lot of chords. I don't want to have to relearn a whole new vocabulary to play a guitar I already love and play.
Yep.
You know, there were keyboard voicings like this 13th chord. You know, everybody knows this 13th chord, right? On the piano, I use these intervals. The 6th is really the 13th, and the flat 7 are a half step apart, and then the 9, or the 2nd and 3rd, are together. Playing these 4 notes together over an A bass. I'll call it A because, you know, relatively speaking, it's A. But I can play that chord now. Like the garden variety 13th chord. And I thought, this is the coolest thing ever. I could play any chord I want. Now, because since we lowered the octave of the first 2 strings, a half step looks like this now, like a 7th. Or this. Between these 2 strings, this is where a lot of the action is on the top 4 strings, right? So I can play 4 chromatic notes, and that's how extreme it is. There it is. Try playing 4 chromatic notes.
The chromatic chord. Unbelievable.
Woo! 4 chromatic notes. You would have to have a hand about this long, you know. So that's an extreme, you know, in extreme. So I started experimenting. Having these amazing where you can ring the notes together. It's lovely. Impossible chords. This is one on my latest record. It's a vocal tune. Yeah. Baby, make me so checked out. It's called Checked Out. And the verse goes. so rich. Even ninth chords. These ones are pretty standard. Here, then it goes. Very cool. I just love big being able to ring notes. Any chord you want.
Unbelievable.
Any chord you want. Simple things like minor chords. We know those garden variety, but you can add the second. That's a typical move. But you have the extra note, which you can't do on a regular guitar. You just can't do it. All I want to do is add that one extra note. In most cases. And guitar just won't allow it.
You can't get them to ring like that, can you? Like it's just it's that beautiful resonance when they all ring together. It's just
I agree with you. These major sevens are my favorite keyboard voicing. It goes 7, 1, 3, 5, which would look these four notes together. There's the root. It's the 7 and the root a half step apart, and the 3rd and the 5th. So I can play it like a regular guitar, and I can put any bass on it. So I can vary, and this is the same. This 1, 3, 5, 7. It's the same thing. Because this is a half step. It's bizarre to think of this note up here as a half step below that one.
unbelievable.
But that's what happens. And impossible chords. Beautiful.
God.
It's just endless. It's an endless new ride, new journey.
Well, when you were... Raison d'Etre was the first album, right, that you did with this tuning? The first time you recorded it.
Yes.
So I imagine once you locked in the tuning and figured out what pitch you wanted it in and the string gauge and everything, I'd imagine the songs just came flooding out thick and fast, right?
Yeah, well, I suddenly didn't have a limit on the guitar, harmonically speaking.
Right.
Not that I don't know what the chords are. I could always go to the piano and play them. But it was such a delight to have it here on my instrument, really. Yeah. I consider this my instrument, not the piano. I'm not very good on the piano. I play it, and I can play it just about any chord. But don't ask me to play a gig on it, I'll take the guitar anywhere and play with anybody, but I won't do that with a keyboard. But I love the keyboard and I play it, and but it I mean, you know, it's just being able to play all those chords that were not part of the vocabulary of a regular guitar.
Right.
And it's just enabled a lot of wonderful new sounds on the guitar.
Well, I suppose that gets back to what you were saying about learning to play more than one instrument, because I guess what you loved hearing on the piano informed you to develop this to the point where then you could hear it on the guitar, and it wouldn't have probably happened if you hadn't been hearing those voicings on the piano, I guess.
Well, yeah, I guess that's right, because my frustration, even back as a youngster when I was 17, I went, I can't play what I want to play.
Right.
On the guitar, I'm frustrated. Chordally, you know, single lines, I could rip up and down the fretboard and have a ball. But when it came to chords and harmony, I could play a lot of cool chords on the guitar with standard tuning. Don't get me wrong, but you know,
Yeah.
and there's always room for development there too, I guess, on the standard tuning. But this gets me right there, and I don't have to learn any new shapes. It's all the same. You know, that's the beauty of it, really, because other alternate tunings, you know, requires you to learn like a new instrument, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I don't have enough time for that.
Right. You must be dying to ask a question, Chris. Go for
No, I was just thinking about when you first developed this tuning and you did the first album. I was just thinking of how many people were trying to transcribe some of that stuff in standard tuning and breaking their fingers.
Yeah, believe me, there were a lot of tab sales at that time.
You know, they're like, what's he doing? How was he
What
doing
the
that?
hell? No, I was happy to share it because I think it's innovative and that creative step. This is not Nashville tuning. I don't care how many times you jump up and down and tell me it's Nashville tuning, because this is not the same pitch as Nashville tuning, and nobody took it down to fundamental playability to where it's in the register like the middle of the piano.
Well, you
So
know,
thank you.
they have dadgad. You know, other tunes get
Yeah.
names, tunings get names, and they stand alone as that particular tuning and become
Yeah, but
synonymous.
it's named after the notes.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, they sort of look at it and go, it is this, and then when
Yeah.
someone does another tuning, they call it drop D and whatever. But
Right, exactly.
yeah, you gotta own that one, Frank, for sure.
Well, I call it Gambale tuning, and you know, if people are going to call it, you know, Nashville down to fifth, okay. But you know, it's that extra step. I always say, you know, and you can get patents in the world of patents just by one extra creative step that nobody's done before. You know, so I just think it's another cool development. You know, I think it's as important as sweep or more important, because I think it could be another standard tuning for those who enjoy it as much as I do.
I'm glad we touched on it here because I want people to know. We want people to know about it.
Well, you know, you can sort of create. I used to in the old days create that density with two guitar parts. You know, so you can sort of do it that way. But, you know, it's fun to be able to sit and play and hear those chords from one guitar, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, you could have one guy playing a D chord, another guy playing an E chord, and you have this big cluster. So, you know, I guess that's why people haven't really jumped on it as much as I think they should. Is because you can sort of simulate it with two guitars. Two guitar, well-written parts, you know.
Right.
You know, but there's enough people checking it out. I mean, it's not like I really don't think about whether it's being accepted or not. I really don't think in those terms.
No.
If you want to, it's there. It's just like anything else, you know. It's for me, it's been an absolute milestone in my guitar playing.
For sure.
Having this available to me. And it's, you know, it's so inspirational, shall I say, because I'm not limited to standard chords. I love it. I love it. I
I think to anybody who tries to argue and say it's just Nashville tuning, they're completely missing the point and all the wonderful music that you're creating with it. Like, same with the sweet picking technique. I mean, you can argue about the technique, but the music you play, like, there's nobody on the planet that sounds like Frank Gambale. When he's warmed up and he's ready to rip, look out. There's only one.
I'm freezing. My studio's freezing today.
There's only one.
Yeah, thank you, man.
The same with that. You know, the tuning. Like, I'm listening to the music that you're playing and hearing the harmonies and going, well, that's, yeah, I love it. It's the music.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
I can't argue with that. You
know?
No. I can't argue with
Well, composition is something I think is the most important thing to me these days. It goes beyond the guitar. You know, I'm writing some new tunes. I'm trying to put a new album together. And I've got several songs done already. But sometimes I'll just write something so simple and acoustic, and it doesn't even have a solo. Or, you know, I go, boy, how my fans gonna really, yeah. You know, I've been called all kinds of things. I love to write all kinds of music. You know, whether it's simple or whether it's complex, and everywhere in between. But I always come at it from the melody and the music. You know, that's driven my everything that I do. It's always comes from a musical standpoint. That's leading the way. The technique follows, and you know, everything else follows. It's all about the music first. You know, I don't want to impress or try to impress guitar players anymore. You know, I've never, well, I only did that when I was younger anyway. I've always ran my own course, you know, just trying to find stuff that appeals to me and hopefully it appeals to others.
You've built an amazing career from that mindset, like as is evidenced by all those magazine covers behind you. That is just fantastic.
Yeah. But, look, I could retire tomorrow and be quite happy. You know, I've played on every major stage and festival in the world several times. I've been around the world so many times, and I've been just about every country worth visiting. You know, what more can you want? I'm happy, and I've played with some of the greatest musicians on the planet. You know, I'm a happy guy.
You're hitting the road again soon. You're going out next month, is it, or March?
March, yeah, in Europe, and actually, I'll be coming your way to Australia.
So when are you coming back?
In May, but I'm only going to Perth, which is a bit far for you guys, I know, in Melbourne. Yeah, the West Australian Performing Arts School are bringing me there to work with their students and to do a couple of concerts. I think it's the first week pretty sure it's the first week of May.
First week.
And so it's working with the students, but they're playing all my music, and there's going to be various ensembles too, like big bands and you know.
Well, that counts
singers.
us out, Brett. We can't play that stuff.
Oh, you can. I can't. I've got a strong back. I'll roadie. So
I was going to say I'll tune up.
Yeah.
Is it the same band as last time, Frank?
Yes, it is actually. Guru Borlai on drums, Hadrian Farad on bass, and Jerry Leonid on keyboards. Great players, all of them, just brilliant players. Yeah. And it's really a powerful band.
It's great you were so active on social media last time too, because you're putting up a lot of clips, and as the tour progressed, you were putting up a lot of stuff, and I was checking them all out. It was just great.
There's a lot more that I haven't put up, actually. I just, you know, I've got to get somebody on it to put up some more stuff. I want to get some really good video on this next, and maybe shoot a whole concert where we can, you know, maybe release it as a live concert kind of
live
video.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah, let's hope that happens.
Yeah.
Man, thanks so much for this, Frank. It's just been absolutely fantastic.
Thanks. I appreciate it. You know, Brett, it's great that you were offering to do this. I haven't really sat down and shared a lot of this stuff in a long time, so it's fun to do that. And Chris, thank you for being part of it too.
Yeah, good on you, Chris. Thank you, mate.
Come back to camera one day, mate.
Brilliant, guys. Have a great day, evening,
Thanks,
whatever
Frank.
the hell it is. Stay well.
See ya.
Until next time. Bye.